I know a ton of young people, and I was in this position. They are bored, they're ambitious, they want to work hard, but they don't know what to do. I mean, I'm still in this position a lot of times today when I find myself bored doing nothing, wanting to work hard, but not knowing what to do. And most people have zero skills, zero life experience, and really nothing to go off of. So if you're in that position, you have to learn something. So find out what you want to do. Let's say you want to learn coding. Allocate 2 hours a day. There's unlimited free coding software where you could practice making apps, doing something stupid. I like macroeconomics. So what I was doing when I was 18 years old and I was desperately trying to find a mentor because I knew that I wanted to work directly under someone who's ran a large business instead of starting one on my own instantly. So I like macroeconomics. So what I would do is I would listen to at least 6 hours of macroeconomics podcast per day, and I would write down anything that I didn't understand, and then I would search up the terminology because it's a whole new language when someone's talking about bank reserves and quantitative easing and interest rates and these things that I was never taught in school. I had absolutely no clue what they were, so I would just look them up, write down the definitions, I'd try and figure it out and actually understand what it was that they were talking about, and not just be able to recite back what it was that they were saying. So then what I would do is I would reach out to every single person who was being interviewed or interviewing the person that I was listening to, regardless. Every single time I'd reach out to them and I'd tell them, hey, what do I have to do to work for you? I'm 18 years old. I'm in high school. Here's X, Y, Z. I would do a personalized outreach to pretty much every single person because I mean that didn't take much time. I want to do it. Uh, then what I was doing is I would read every single finance book I could get my hands on. Anything that anyone recommended, I'd read it, I'd take notes, I would just try and understand everything. Where I think I really messed up is all I was doing was consuming information and I was never outputting. So now what I would do, let's say if I was wanting to study the macroeconomics and I had the exact same motives, I would probably instantly go to some sort of networking event and find someone who was super into this stuff with me, some sort of live event in the area. It could be probably not local. I probably would have just went to any live event that was going on in the macroeconomic space because there's quite a few of them. I would have taken full advantage of it and met every single person there, or at least tried to start a conversation. The ones that I thought that we were on a similar intellectual journey where we were actually really trying to understand this stuff, I'd have weekly calls with them or even bi-nightly calls with them where we would talk and discuss these concepts. That's actually what I did after I went to my first kind of live conference. One of the guys that I met, what we did is every single night we just started to bounce ideas back and forth off each other. I was asking, we would just try and figure out what it was that was actually going on from someone like what Jeff Snyder or George Gammon, what they were talking about. And we would just talk about that every single night because when you have to teach what you are learning to somebody else, you quickly realize how little you actually know, which is why I was saying it was a mistake for me to just consume. I needed to do some sort of output. Other output that I did that I should have done more of is I was writing a blog post. Though one of the ways that I was trying to get a job, uh, I would somehow find a way to reach out to every single person who was on the podcast. I'd find their email somehow. Sometimes it was impossible. You'd find their Twitter, their LinkedIn, whatever. I found something. I found a way to reach out to them. Found their website where they had an email, and then I just said, hey, would you be okay if I send you my newsletter where I'm going over what I'm seeing macroeconomic wise and some sort of investment thesis around those economic theories? And then what I was doing is I was providing more value to them because at the time I wanted to maybe work for some sort of hedge fund for free or something to where I could have made some sort of income in the future, or someone that was running a business. I was not picky, but I was right. I actually forgot that I was doing this. Now I was writing a newsletter. I should find those because I could track them down somewhere. I was using, I think, this company called Wix, where I'd send the newsletter out to every single person, and some people would read it, some people would respond, not too often, but it was a way to get some of my work out there so they could see what I actually knew, and that was my way of putting my work down on paper. So I would have doubled down on that. Instead of doing it once a week, I probably would have done one every few days and tried to really put a lot of more thought into it and express my ideas better. At the time, I just didn't have real skill sets. And then what I would do is, which I did, but I only did it once, is there was this one guy who lived in the Boston area who I wanted to work for. Instead of writing him an email, which I did, I sent him an Instagram, I sent him a Twitter DM, I sent him a LinkedIn thing. and he had an office in Boston. So what I did is I went there because I lived in the area, and I knocked on the office, and there was a multiple layers of security. So I didn't even get through the first layer of security. But what I could have done is I could have waited there every single day if I wanted to. I could have drove there at 5 a.m., wait till he got to the office someday, and just told him, "Hey, I've been coming every single day, just looking to shake your hand." That would have been more extreme, but at that point, I'd already had some other stuff figured out. I could have found another 5 people who lived in the area and did the exact same thing and just waited till one of them gave me a chance to where I could introduce myself and say hello. Because when you're 20, I don't think the best course of action is starting a business when you have no skills. You have nothing. You have nothing. So I knew that my only option was mentoring myself under someone. And what finally worked for me is I got a tattoo of George Gammon's logo on my leg. I took my first ever flight from Boston to Arizona, and I met him and I shook his hand, and then you were talked face to face talking to someone, and then inevitably, or eventually, I should say, not inevitably, I started working with him, and then I started a little business outside of that, which is what I'm doing currently. So, I mean, I don't have a great answer for someone who is young and ambitious, but you just have to learn something. I don't care what it is. Let's say you wanted to fricking make content or something like that. First, I would say reverse engineer every single person that you like to follow right now. Figure out why you click on their videos, and then um, write down the order of their video. How are they starting it? How does it hook you? At what points do you lose entertainment, or do you lose your education? When you do that, how do you feel? How could you make something like that better? How could you incorporate what you know, personal stories, into something? How could you practice your editing? How could you practice your thumbnails, your titles, your graphic designs? How could you practice the flow, the film? You need to get good at something if you want to do anything, which is the main problem is the lack of skill. So you have to find something that you're interested in, and then I just would say kind of hyper obsess over it, which is not an easy answer. There's no simple solution, or it is simple, but it's very, very difficult. You just have to put in a ton of hours. I mean, it took me 9 months of doing that every single day until I even really got a job interview. And I was just every single day, I was reaching out to, let's say, 5 people. I was consuming 11 hours of content per day. I was doing every single thing in my power to allow this to happen. I think one of the biggest things is just cutting out the habits that you know you shouldn't be doing, and replacing them things with you know you should. Like stop masturbating, stop eating bad food, stop scrolling on Instagram or TikTok or whatever your big vice is all day, and then replace that with going to the gym, exercising frequently, eating healthier, studying something that is important. Uh, it's the problem is you don't see any results. And for me, I think very big picture. I am not concerned with my income at all right now. All I'm concerned about is how much value I can provide to the marketplace, because I know if I can provide unlimited value, there will be unlimited opportunities in the future to make as much money as I humanly want, which is why I sacrifice short term income for experience and knowledge and the wisdom of other people, which I genuinely think is going to pay off massively in the future. Even though now it's not like I'm making crazy amounts of money. For me, it is because I found a way to have no expenses, because I've started to work for wealthier and wealthier people to where now all my expenses are pretty much covered for, and I am making very good money. But I would not be able to retire my parents per se. So just gonna keep going. I don't. Someone asked me the question, Josh, what should I do if I'm super young and ambitious and want to work hard? But I don't know what to do and I'm bored. And that resonates with me a ton because it is very, very difficult. You got to find something you're passionate, or I don't even care if you're passionate about it. At the time, I didn't really give a shit about macroeconomics, if I'm being honest with you. I did not care about it. I just knew there was the first ever podcast I listened to. I remember this vividly after you Read Rich Dad Poor Dad and some of those super basic books, was George Gammon interviewing Brent Johnson, who talks about the dollar milkshake theory, which is how all this dollar denominated debt around the world is going to, it causes this inherent demand for dollars, which has nothing to do with the US dollar system. And for me, they were speaking the most foreign language of all time. My mind was literally blown, and I was thinking to myself, holy shit, I have absolutely no clue what I want to do with my life, but I do know if I can understand what these guys are saying on this podcast, I still might not know what I'm going to do with my life, but I think I'll have a better idea. And I vividly remember that exact moment I decided that I was going to make macroeconomics my entire life for until I could figure out what they were saying. And now the funny thing is, I'm really good friends with George. Or George is like he's like an uncle to me, like one of my best friends, and the greatest person ever. What my biggest dream? Well, I have two really big dreams. One is to retire my parents. The other one is to give George a watch collection for every single dollar that he's ever paid me, like a few $100,000 watch collection. Give it to him as like a thank you gift someday. And then, so I'm George is the best, and then Brent Johnson, I'm also very good friends with. So it's really amazing how full circle that has gone. But that was the distinguishing point for me. I just said, I know that this is, I know that I don't care what I'm going to do. If I can figure this out, everything else will come along. And that's what happened. All I did was hyper obsess over it. I number one, stuck to my word, which is so important. Uh, just when you tell yourself you're going to do something, you actually do it. Because if you don't even keep the word with yourself, why would you ever keep your word with a spouse, a business partner, when you get a client that you're going to fulfill whatever they say or whatever you say you can do? So there's so many crucial aspects as to why you need to keep your word within yourself. But anyway, that's what I did. And I didn't do anything else, so uh, I don't have any real life experience to help anyone else out. All I can say is what worked for me, and you can take that information as you will. But that does resonate me, and I know there's definitely probably hundreds of thousands of not just young people but older people as well who want to work harder, but they just genuinely don't know what to do. So I guess it comes down to, what do you not mind doing, or what do you hate doing, and maybe figure something out from there. Not doing what you hate, like I personally would hate coding, but some people love it. So if I loved coding, I think that I would just spend, let's say, 3 hours a day coding, doing some sort of deep code practicing, because there's unlimited free software you could pay for. It doesn't really matter, to where you could practice coding. Maybe once you get better at it, once you spend 4 months practicing your coding to where you can do pretty mid-level things, then try and develop your own app. And then if you want to work for somebody, I would develop some sort of code for somebody else for free with no expectations that they'll even answer you. And because one, you'll be practicing your skill sets, which you are used to doing every single day anyway. And then you are trying to find a way to get a foot in the door somewhere, because I've noticed everything comes down to the connections that you have. Now, people would rather work with me because I have shown results for their friends. For example, Ken McElroy. Uh, I'm getting unlimited opportunities from his friends because people are saying, "Hey, what are you doing to your channel? How do I do that to mine?" And then he's saying, "Well, it's this kid Josh that's doing it for me. Here, let me put you in contact for him." So it's all about connections. So you got to get your foot in the door somehow. But the only way you can get your foot in the door is if you can provide value in some way, shape, or form. So it starts with building a skill set towards something, which takes a ton of hours. There's really no cheat code for it. I wish there was, but there isn't. But being young is a huge superpower, because the one of the things that I've noticed is every single older successful person really wants to help the younger generation, especially if they're young and ambitious. Especially, I mean, if they people can tell if you are genuinely interested in what they're saying. And most people never experience anyone having any interest in themselves, where I am hyper interested. Like, I'm just genuinely curious about what these people have to say, what their backstories are, how I can learn from it. And that's a good feeling for the other person, that this young kid is actually interested in what I'm saying. And you can clearly tell that when I'm talking to them, because I am genuinely interested and I'm asking real hardcore follow-up questions. And every single thought that comes to my head, I'm going to ask, which I'm okay with, because there's a superpower to being young. You can be naive, and I just play the card right, because you are, and you just approach it from that angle. There's another young person who I met at the first Rebel Capitalist Live that I went to. That was the first conference. He was kind of taking a different approach. Instead of asking people every single stupid question he could possibly imagine, he was trying to be the smartest person in the room and tell people, no, that's wrong. Here's why it's wrong, X, Y, and Z. His entire focus was showing other people what he knew instead of trying to figure out what other people knew, which is taking, I think, the ego away from it, knowing that you're stupid. No 21-year-old is smart. Or they may be smart, but they are not, they don't have wisdom. So I don't know. I mean, I could talk about this for another 35 minutes, but I'm not going to, even though this is something that interests me. So anyway, I'm going to go. Goodbye.